We hear all the time about threats to our global supply chains, things like oil, food, you name it. But what if the single most critical lifeline, the one our entire modern world is built on, is way more fragile than any of us ever thought?
It sounds like a crazy question, right? Something straight out of a spy thriller. The idea that the entire global internet, this thing that feels like it's everywhere at once, could just be physically cut? Well, what if I told you the answer is a pretty scary yes?
To get how that's even possible, we've got to pull back the curtain on a massive secret that's hiding in plain sight. It's a huge misunderstanding about how the internet actually works. We all talk about the cloud. We use Wi-Fi, so naturally, we picture the internet as this invisible force just floating in the air around us. But that's not really the truth. The internet isn't in the sky. It's at the bottom of the ocean. An incredible 99% of all international data zips around the world through a massive physical network of undersea wires.
Okay, think back to that old school toy phone you might have made as a kid. 2 cups or matchboxes and a piece of string. You talk into one end, and that physical string carries the vibrations of your voice all the way to the other side. It's a direct physical connection.
Believe it or not, the entire global internet works on pretty much that exact same principle. When you strip away all the complexity, it's really just one computer connected to another computer by a very, very long and sophisticated wire. That's the big secret.
So, what in the world are these wires made of? And how on earth do they manage to survive under miles of ocean with all that crushing pressure? Well, the magic is all thanks to something called an optical fiber cable. At its very core, you've got a strand of glass that's actually thinner than a human hair. Your data gets turned into these tiny pulses of light that just shoot down this glass pipe. The light bounces perfectly off the inside walls. It's a cool process called total internal reflection, and that lets it travel for huge distances without losing any speed or information. Of course, protecting that little piece of glass is a massive engineering challenge. I mean, each cable is basically wearing a suit of armor. It's wrapped in all these layers: petroleum jelly to keep water out, a copper sheath that carries power, super strong steel wires, and then this thick plastic shell to protect it from the insane pressure at the bottom of the deep ocean.
And the scale of this network is it's staggering. There are over 450 of these cables crisscrossing the ocean floor. And get this, if you laid them all end to end, they would stretch for 1.3 million kilometers. That's enough to circle the Earth more than 30 times. This is the hidden circulatory system of our digital world. But like any big system, it's got weak points. And one of the most critical is a narrow little strip of water we normally hear about because of oil tankers, the Strait of Hormuz.
So what makes this one spot so risky? Well, out in the open ocean, these cables are miles deep. You need a specialized submarine just to get near them. But here, in the Strait of Hormuz, they're only about 200 feet down. A team of divers could easily get to them. And to make things worse, you have about 20 of these crucial cables all squeezed together in this one narrow, incredibly tense passage. It is a perfect bottleneck.
And please, don't think for a second this is just hypothetical. It is already happening. In 2023, cables were cut in the Red Sea, and it disrupted a huge 17% of global internet traffic. Then a key cable connecting Taiwan got severed. This vulnerability isn't just real, it's being actively exploited.
So what are the real stakes here? Why should a potential problem in a place like the Strait of Hormuz matter to you and me?
It's easy to think, okay, so maybe we don't get news from the Gulf for a few days, what's the big deal? But the impact would be immediate, and it would be global.
First up, the financial markets. Think about companies like Google, Meta, and Amazon. Their stocks could tank. Global markets that run on split-second information would be thrown into absolute chaos. Then there's energy. Information about oil and gas shipments coming through that strait would be delayed or worse, completely blacked out. And maybe most critically, in a volatile region, if you cut the internet, you cut off vital information about ceasefires, troop movements, or humanitarian crises. The rest of the world would suddenly go dark.
Now, to be perfectly clear, there hasn't been any official threat from Iran to cut these specific cables. But what's happened in other regions has basically put a giant spotlight on this vulnerability. It's shown anyone with bad intentions that this critical infrastructure is exposed and honestly surprisingly easy to attack. The playbook is now out in the open.
So, it turns out our digital world, the one that feels so wireless and ethereal, is actually built on a fragile foundation of glass wires sitting at the bottom of the ocean. And that forces us to ask a really important question. We've found this weak link, but where's the next one?